Okay, first and foremost, I would like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rakakadash, and double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Today we're going to be continuing with the book of Isaiah. So we're on chapter 3. The Most High will remove the leaders. Isaiah chapter 3 verse 1. For behold, the Lord Yahweh of hosts, doth take away from Jerusalem and from Judah the state and the staff, the whole stay of bread and the whole stay of water. Now it says that he doth take away from Judah and Jerusalem the state and the staff, going into like the supplies, the support, the things that keep, the people up or uphold the society or the nation, the whole stay of bread. So, all of their food supply, and the whole stay of water, their water supply, those things that, you need. But continuing, the mighty man and the man of war, right? So their military, their defenses, the judge and the prophet and the prudent and the ancient, which these are, the pretty much the leaders, who lead and guide. The Lord said he's going to take all of that away. Pretty much, all the things meant to sustain and supply Israel, the Lord will take away. The captain of 50 and the honorable man, right? Going so like the officers, of high rank, and things of that nature, and the counselor and the cunning artificer and the eloquent orator. So the counselor, those who advise, and the cunning artificer going into like the enchanters, the magicians and whatnot, and the eloquent orator, which goes into like a charmer, for a snake charmer, for example. So the Lord's going to take away all of that as well, which those are left-handed practices, because we know that's delving into witchcraft and wizardry is a sin. And I will give children to be their princes, and babes shall rule over them, right? In which this is not literally talking about children shall be their rulers and babies ruling over them and whatnot, but going into like the mindset of their rulers is going to be childlike, meaning lacking of wisdom, the lacking, the thought process of a true ruler, which is needed. And if you do that to a ruler, that leads the nation, the people, into chaos, to turmoil. So let's get here in Ecclesiastes, or Sirach chapter 10. We'll start at verse 1. A wise judge will instruct his people, and the government of a prudent man is well ordered. Right, so a wise judge, a wise ruler will instruct his people, and they will be well ordered. They're going to be in good hands. So, their kingdom will thrive. As the judge of the people is himself, so are his officers. And what manner of man the ruler of the city is, such are all they that dwell therein. Right, so if the ruler of the city is a well-mannered, wise guy, the city will dwell. Because the city is going to be likened unto a well-mannered, a wise guy, doing the right things and thriving. And the unwise king destroyeth his people, but through the prudence of them which are in authority, the city shall be inhabited. Right, so focuses on this part. And the unwise king destroyed his people. Right, so what the Lord here said, and I will give children to be their princes, and babes shall rule over them. Right, because he's going to make their rulers as babies, lacking wisdom, lacking order, lacking knowledge. And as we just read, an unwise king destroyed, going to destroy the nation, because it's going to lead the kingdom into turmoil, chaos. So verse 5, And the people shall be oppressed, every one by another, and every one by his neighbor. The child shall behave himself proudly against the ancient, and the base against the honorable. So it says, and the people shall be oppressed, every one by another, and every one by his neighbor. And right, because when things go downhill, what do people do? They start to turn on each other. Every man for himself. I gotta look out for my family. I gotta look out for me and mine. So what? They start to turn on each other, oppressing one another. Maybe when things, go down, you might have people who were well off before using that to take advantage of those who weren't. The child shall behave himself proudly against the ancient, right? The ancient being the elders. So that the child will lack respect for his elders and being disrespectful, not caring about what the elder had to say, things like that. And the base against the honorable, right? So those of lower position disrespecting those of higher. Say for example, a woman, a regular woman, either woman, honestly, disrespecting the high priest, for example. That's how it would become. They would behave proudly, which overall is just it's a lack of order. When a man shall take hold of his brother of the house of his father, saying, Thou hast clothing, be thou our ruler, and let this ruin be under thy hand. Right? So what's happening is, things are going to be so bad that, you're going to have people looking for someone to bring order, someone to take charge and lead them out of the chaos. And the example is given here. What? You have a brother who pretty much sees that, it seems that his brother is doing well off. That's why it says, Thou hast clothing, be thou our ruler. Right? So you seem to be doing well off. How about, you take charge. You be the one to step up, take charge, and let this ruin be under thy hand. So you take charge. But what will he say? In that day shall he swear, saying, I will not be an healer, for in my house is neither bread nor clothing. Make me not a ruler of the people. Right? So they're gonna be declining that offer. Once again, only looking out for their families. What does he say? For in my house is neither bread nor clothing. So, I don't even have enough in my own home. Make me not the ruler of that people. So nah. I'm straight. I don't want that. I don't want that position. I'm not trying to take on that burden. And that's going to be the sentiment. For Jerusalem is ruined and Judah is falling, because their tongue and their doings are against the Lord Yahweh, to provoke the eyes of his glory. Right? So their actions and their words were going against the Lord to the point where it provoked him to anger, leading him to bring this calamity upon them. Verse 9, the shew of their countenance doth witness against them, and they declare their sin as Sodom, they hide it not. Woe unto their soul, for they have rewarded evil unto unto themselves. Right? So the shew of their countenance, the shew going into the look, on their countenance being what? Their face. So, the look of their face it bears witness against them. And that's like we see it happen now. Sometimes you can, when someone is, have you ever had like someone lie to you and you can just tell by their face that they're lying? Even though they're trying to make it seem like they're not lying, obviously, but you just know by the look in their eyes, the look in their face, that they are lying. You don't even have to know the truth for yourself, for real. You can just tell that they're lying just by looking at them. And this is what, he's saying, like just the look on your faces, I can just tell that you're wicked. The look of your faces lets me know that you're wicked. You're up to no good. You're doing what you're not supposed to be doing. And they declare their sin as Sodom, they hide it not. Right? So what? They were openly wicked, as Sodom. They didn't care. They were proudly wicked. It's not like they were being wicked and then, turn around and being humble about it. Like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Nah, they proudly did it. They didn't care. Woe unto their soul, for they have rewarded evil unto themselves. Right. So they're bringing judgment onto themselves because of the things that they're doing. It's not like the Lord is just, okay, I feel like judging y'all, so I'm going to judge y'all harshly. He can do that because what? He's the Most High, but that wouldn't be righteous, right? We know the Lord is a righteous judge. So they're the reason that they're being judged because they're doing the things that he explicitly told them not to do. And then they're not even sorry about it. Sincerely. Like, they really just don't care. So now they're going to get judged for that. Say ye to the righteous that it shall be well with them, for they shall eat the fruit of their doings. Right. So the righteous, those who following the ways of the Lord, they're going to be rewarded accordingly. If you're following the ways of the Lord, why would he judge you harshly? Woe unto the wicked, it shall be ill with him, for the reward of his hands shall be given him. Right. So likewise, those who were wicked, they're going to be judged according to that wickedness. It's like, I'll give an example. Say you have two brothers, and their father. The father sends them off to school, right? You have one brother who you have one brother who goes to school, does the right thing, does what he's supposed to do, gets all A's and whatnot, teacher's favorite. The teacher might call home and thank the father for being such a good father to this kid and whatnot, right? So when he comes home, okay, the father, surprises him with a gift, right? And then you have the other brother who goes to school and does the opposite. He's the one being bad in class, the one who's class clown. Teacher done called his dad 3 times complaining. When he gets home, what do you think's waiting for him? The dad with a belt in his hand. So that's what basically is happening here. The righteous are going to be rewarded accordingly, and the wicked rewarded accordingly. As for my people, children are their oppressors, right? Going back into their rulers lacking that wisdom, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err and destroy the way of thy paths. Right, so it says, and women rule over them. And not only because you have like kind of like nowadays, what the woman has more influence over the man, dealing with all the we're equal this or equal that. And then you have guys who simp over these women just because they're pretty and things like that. But also, back during these times, let's say you had a guy who ruled over a certain portion, right? But then his woman, he was I'm just going to use the word simp for his woman, right? So indirectly, she's the one ruling over all that he has, because they bend to his word, but he bends to hers. So that's how a woman would rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err and destroy the way of thy paths. Right. So their rulers caused them to go off and walk in the paths opposite of righteousness. You have we'll just say, and destroy the way of thy paths, right? So you have the path, the right path that the Lord set. He told us what to do. The rulers, them being unwise and women, they destroyed those righteous paths laid out a red carpet over here, a wicked path for them to walk, or leading them to go off and, commit iniquity. Verse 13, the Most High will judge. The Lord Yahweh standeth up to plead and standeth to judge the people. Right? So, and plead as in not beg, but plead as in to witness against, state your complaints. So you can imagine it's like a courtroom here, where you have the accuser, and then you have the accused, and you have the judge, who makes the final decision. The accuser, is the Lord? He's pleading, making his complaints against the accused, Israel, right? In which the Lord, funny enough, he's the judge as well. So, he's gonna lay out the judgment he sees fit. Ain't no matter what they say, it doesn't matter, because the Lord is the judge as well. The Lord Yahweh will enter into judgment with the ancients of his people and the princes thereof, for ye have eaten up the vineyard, the spoil of the poor is in your houses. Right, so the ancients of the people being the elders and the princes thereof, really going into the rulers. Why? Because they have eaten up the vineyard. They're supposed to be the ones guarding, and protecting the vineyard, which is being likened unto Israel, making sure they walk in the right paths, making sure nothing happens to them, protecting them, guarding them, right? But instead, they're the ones that end up taking advantage and extorting or oppressing Israel, oppressing the people, when you're supposed to be doing the opposite. Your job was to keep that from happening, but here it is, you're the one doing it. What mean ye that ye beat my people to pieces and grind the faces of the poor, saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts. Right, so, by what means did you think this was okay to do? It says to beat my people to pieces and grind Salakia, to beat my people to pieces and grind the faces of the poor, which is really going into pretty much extorting them and taking advantage of them and pretty much sucking them dry of their benefits, oppressing them, and sucking them dry of all that they have. So the Lord is like, why y'all doing? What made y'all think it was okay to do this? Like what got into y'all? Saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts. Judah's woman denounced, right? So now it's going, dealing with the women, because they aren't exempt from judgment. So verse 16, moreover the Lord Yahweh said, because the daughters of Zion are haughty, going into that arrogance, that pride, and walk with stretched forth necks and wanton eyes, walking and mincing as they go, and making a tingling with their feet. So it says, and walking with stretched forth necks and wanton eyes, wanton going into a lustful, a lecherous type of look. They're that look, that women give off sometimes, whereas they're like they're undressing you with their eyes, like that kind of cat type of stare. And wanton eyes, walking and mincing as they go, and making a tingling with their feet. Right, so that walk, trying to be all seductive and trying to grab attention, pretty much, and making a tingling with their feet, going into with an ankle bracelet, Therefore the Lord will smite with a scab the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion, and the Lord Yahweh will discover their secret places, right? Which is going into, the curse that the Lord put on women, pertaining to their hair. That's why, because the women, back then, it was no problem for them to have long, thick, healthy, luscious hair. That was just common. That was natural. But the Lord said, what? He will put a scab, smite the head of their crown with a scab. So, it became not only, baldness, but, the hair probably wasn't as long, probably less healthy, probably harder. Yeah, less healthy, harder, baldness, shorter, and we still see that today, mainly dealing with the women of Judah, the so-called black women, so-called African American women, so-called Negroes, and that's why half the time you see one, they have a wig on. Back then they didn't need none of that. Their hair was naturally like that, naturally long, hair probably touching their ankles, and the hair was naturally just perfect. But the Lord put that curse on them. In that day the Lord would take away the bravery of their tinkling ornaments about their feet, and their caws, and their round tires like the moon. Right, in that word bravery going into the beauty. So that the beauty of the tinkling ornaments of their feet, the beauty of the their jewelries, the anklets, the head jewelries, the necklaces, yeah, and things of that nature. But it continues, there's a comma right there, the chains and the bracelets and the mufflers, the bonnets and the ornaments of the legs and the headbands and the tablets and the earrings. And tablets going into like the mirrors, the rings and nose jewels, the changeable suits of apparel and the mantles and the wimples and the crisping pins, the glasses and the fine linen and the hoods and the veils. Right, so he said he would pretty much take away all the fancy, the beautiful things that woman, cared for, that they desire. The clothing, jewelry, the bags, the accessories, etc. The Lord said he will take away all of that. Verse 24, and it shall come to pass that instead of sweet smell there shall be stink, and instead of a girdle a rent, and instead of a well set hair baldness, and instead of a stomacher a girding of sackcloth, and burning instead of beauty. So it says, and it shall come to pass that instead of sweet smell there shall be stink. So instead of the nice fragrances, the oils, you might walk past a woman, she smelled like flowers or peaches, there would be stench. And instead of a girdle a rent, in which a girdle, because the women, they would have, like, say, a long gown, the girdle was like the middle piece to pretty much tie the gown down, but instead of that they would have a rent going into like a rope, and instead of well set hair baldness, and instead of a stomacher a girding of sackcloth, which a stomacher being another like fancy type of clothing where for the stomach area, a girdle of sackcloth, right? So like a gown made out of sackcloth, and burning instead of beauty, burning going into branding, in which all of these is pretty much, going into that concept of them being captive. Thy men shall fall by the sword, and thy mighty in the war, and her gates shall lament and mourn, and she being desolate shall sit upon the ground. And once again, all of these things, dealing with the time around Isaiah, these things really came to pass during that Babylonian captivity. But nowadays, being that we're still under the curses, some of those things, are still taking effect now. But yeah, that's Isaiah chapter 3. Lord willing, this video was edifying. Once more, I would like to give our praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rachak Wadash, and double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Shalom to the hopeful elect.